The words came out casually, almost like a joke, but they landed like a stone dropped into still water. You're not date material. The room didn't go silent, but something in the air shifted. Conversations at nearby tables blurred into the background. A few people chuckled awkwardly, assuming it was playful teasing, but the woman standing near the coffee counter didn't laugh. Her smile froze for a second before slowly fading, as if she had heard those words before, too many times. Across the cafe, a tired single dad sitting by the window looked up. He hadn't meant to listen in. He had only come there after a long shift, hoping for a quiet moment before picking up his daughter from daycare. But when he saw the way the woman lowered her eyes and quietly tried to brush off the comment, something about it stirred a feeling he knew too well. Loneliness. The kind that hides behind polite smiles. Before we go further into this story, take a quick moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the smallest acts of respect can change someone's life forever. The single dad's name was Daniel Carter. Life had not been gentle with him. 5 years earlier, his wife had died unexpectedly after a short illness, leaving him alone with their newborn daughter, Lily. The nights had been the hardest. A crying baby, unpaid bills, and the crushing weight of grief had nearly broken him. But slowly, painfully, he learned how to survive. He worked long hours repairing cars at a small mechanic shop on the edge of town. His hands were always stained with grease, and his back ached constantly, but he never complained. Every dollar he earned went toward Lily's future. His world had become small and simple: work, daycare pickup, bedtime stories, and quiet dinners. Dating had never even crossed his mind. Until that afternoon. The woman by the counter had tried to laugh off the insult. She grabbed her coffee and walked toward the door, pretending not to care, but Daniel noticed the way her shoulders tightened, as if she was carrying something heavy inside. The man who had made the comment, well-dressed, confident, and clearly amused with himself, shook his head as he spoke to his friend. "She's nice, sure," he said casually, loud enough for half the cafe to hear, "but come on, she's not date material." Daniel didn't know exactly why he stood up. Maybe it was the memory of how people had looked at him after his wife died, like he was somehow broken. Maybe it was the way that woman's dignity had quietly crumbled in front of strangers. He simply walked toward their table. The confident man glanced up, confused. Daniel wasn't angry, his voice wasn't loud, but it carried a calm weight that made the surrounding conversations slow down. He looked at the man and said something simple. "She's not date material?" Then Daniel glanced toward the door where the woman had just stepped outside. "She's marriage material." The words weren't dramatic. They weren't meant to start a scene. But something about the quiet certainty in his voice made the table fall silent. The confident man scoffed. "You know her or something?" Daniel shook his head. "No," he said calmly, "but I know respect when I see someone who deserves it." And then he walked out of the cafe. Outside, the late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the sidewalk. The woman stood near the curb, staring into her coffee cup as if gathering herself before facing the world again. Daniel hesitated for a moment. He wasn't good at talking to strangers. Years of focusing only on survival had made him quiet and reserved. But he approached her anyway. Her name was Elena Rivera. She was 32 years old, a middle school art teacher who had spent most of her adult life believing she simply wasn't enough for people. She wasn't glamorous or flashy. She didn't chase attention. Instead, she spent her evenings painting landscapes and helping struggling students discover creativity they didn't know they had. But relationships had never worked out for her. Men liked her kindness, but they often wanted someone more exciting, more confident, more polished. So when she overheard those words, "not date material," it felt like confirmation of a fear she had carried quietly for years. Daniel approached her carefully. He didn't try to charm her. He didn't try to impress her. He simply said something honest. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." Elena looked up, surprised. She recognized him immediately as the man who had spoken in the cafe. "You didn't have to say that back there," she said softly. Daniel shrugged. "Maybe not," he replied, "but someone should have." There was a long pause between them, the kind where two strangers slowly decide whether to trust each other. Elena finally smiled, a small, cautious smile. "Thank you," Daniel nodded. Then, almost awkwardly, he admitted something unexpected. "I'm not really date material either." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" Daniel scratched the back of his neck. I'm a mechanic. I work too much. I have a 4-year-old daughter who thinks bedtime stories require at least 10 different voices. Elena laughed softly. And that makes you not date material? Daniel smiled slightly. For most people, apparently. Something warm passed between them in that moment. Not attraction exactly, but understanding. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed again and again, sometimes at the same café, sometimes at the park where Daniel brought Lily after work. Elena quickly discovered that Lily was the center of Daniel's entire world. The little girl adored him, clinging to his arm and laughing whenever he tried silly voices for her favorite storybooks. And slowly, Elena began to see the quiet strength behind Daniel's tired eyes. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't smooth, but he was patient, gentle, and fiercely devoted. Daniel, in turn, noticed the way children lit up around Elena. He saw how she knelt down to Lily's level when they talked, treating her with genuine attention instead of brushing her off like most adults. Lily adored her almost instantly, but Daniel remained cautious. Losing his wife had left a permanent scar. The idea of letting someone into their lives felt both hopeful and terrifying. Meanwhile, Elena struggled with her own doubts. The voice in her head, the one that remembered the words, "not date material," often whispered that she didn't belong in someone's life like this. Still, they kept seeing each other. Not as a couple at first, just two people slowly building trust. Months passed. Then one evening, Daniel invited Elena to dinner at a small family restaurant. It wasn't fancy. The lighting was simple, the tables were worn, and Lily insisted on bringing her favorite stuffed rabbit along. But for Daniel, it felt like the most important dinner of his life. Halfway through the meal, Lily fell asleep against Elena's shoulder. Daniel watched the quiet moment unfold. The way Elena gently brushed Lily's hair away from her face. The way Lily instinctively leaned closer. And suddenly something inside Daniel became clear. He remembered the words from that cafe months earlier. She's not date material. Daniel looked at Elena and realized how wrong that statement had been. She wasn't just someone to date. She was someone who understood love, patience, and family. She was someone who made his daughter feel safe. She was someone who made his world feel less lonely. In that moment, Daniel didn't see a woman trying to impress anyone. He saw someone extraordinary. Near the end of the evening, he said something simple but powerful. "I meant what I said that day." Elena looked confused. "In the cafe," Daniel continued quietly, "when I said you were marriage material." Her eyes widened slightly. Daniel wasn't proposing. He wasn't rushing anything. But he wanted her to know that he saw her value clearly. Elena felt something inside her chest loosen, like a door that had been locked for years slowly opening. For the first time in a long time, she believed that maybe she wasn't lacking something, maybe the right person simply hadn't been looking. And if this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in love and second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us what truly matters. But before the story ends, here's a special request. Comment below and tell us, do you believe kindness can change someone's life in a single moment? Because sometimes it really can. A year later, Daniel stood in a small garden surrounded by close friends, co-workers, and a very excited 6-year-old girl holding a basket of flower petals. Lily proudly walked down the aisle first. At the end of that path stood Elena and Daniel. The man who had once said she wasn't date material never saw this moment. But it didn't matter. Because the quiet mechanic who barely spoke to strangers had seen something far more important. Not perfection, not popularity, but a heart strong enough to love a broken family and help make it whole again. And sometimes, that's exactly what marriage material truly looks like. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that the right person will always see your worth, even when others don't.